The sky above the arena pulsed with colors unknown to Earth. Eyes waves of violet and gold, crashing like oceans across the sky, while two suns hovered like watchful gods over the crowd. Thousands had gathered under the arches of the ancient stone structure, their voices a low hum, their eyes fixed on the center stage, where a new chapter of tradition was about to unfold. Rain stood at the far end of the platform, among the small group of selected humans. His clothes were plain and gray, his hands locked behind his back, and though his face remained calm, his heartbeat was anything but steady. Around him stood others from Earth, men and women chosen for their health, their youth, their clean blood, but they all knew none of it mattered. The choosing was not about compatibility or kindness, it was about power. The alien royals sat on thrones carved into a ring of stone that circled the stage. Their faces glowed with patterns that shimmered and shifted like living tattoos. Their eyes were cold, full of knowledge and judgment, and not one of them moved except for the girl who stood among them. Her name was not known to humans, and her appearance was unlike any of the others. Skin was a soft metallic hue, neither silver nor gold, but something in between. Her hair floated behind her like strands of light, her expression unreadable as she stepped forward from the throne. Her eyes scanned the humans slowly, carefully choosing. This was the ritual known as the pairing. It was said that once each cycle, a member of the alien high line would choose a companion from another species to bond with. The ceremony that followed was one of energy and memory, a deep psychic connection, meant to merge souls, bodies, and purposes, but for humans it had always ended in death. No Earthborn had ever survived. Rain had heard the stories. He had seen the footage of past pairings, the screaming, the convulsing, the complete collapse of body and mind. He knew that the ceremony was designed for beings with biology far beyond human limits, and yet here he was standing still as the alien girl's gaze passed over the others, felt her eyes land on him. It was not a soft feeling like the glance of a curious stranger. It was like standing under a waterfall of thoughts, like his memories were being scanned, like his bones were being weighed. She did not blink as she stepped down from her circle and walked toward him. The crowd fell silent. The other humans stepped back as if sensing what was about to happen. Rain looked up slowly, trying not to show fear, trying to hold on to something inside himself, something strong. The girl stopped in front of him. Without a word, she raised her hand and touched his chest with two fingers. A ripple moved across the platform like the world itself exhaled. Every alien in the arena stood, and every human stared in shock. She had chosen him. Guards moved in quickly, surrounding Rain, not out of protection, but to take him away. Some humans screamed, telling him not to go. Some fell to their knees, praying for him, or maybe for themselves. Rain did not speak. He only looked at her once more, and saw something unexpected in her eyes. There was no cruelty, there no hunger, no sadistic joy in watching him taken. Instead, there was something softer, something distant, like sadness buried deep within her. She turned and walked back to the circle, leaving him in the grip of armored guards, who led him through a side gate and into the tunnels beneath the arena. The halls were alive with light, moving through the walls like blood through veins. Creatures passed him by with masks, covering their faces, some tall, some with wings, some with eyes that never blinked. None of them looked at him like a person. He was a tool, a vessel, a subject of the pairing, and nothing more. He was taken to a room filled with warm mist where strange fluids dripped from crystal tubes. Above a bed made of glowing stone, a healer stood beside the bed, long fingers typing symbols into a floating panel. "This one is too weak," the healer muttered, his voice thin like paper. "They always are. He will last less than a minute," said another. "His skin will tear, his brain will burn." Rain did not respond. He was listening but not reacting. Every word was a reminder of what he already knew. They stripped him of his clothes and gave him robes of soft silver fabric. He lay on the stone bed, feeling the energy pulse through him like it was testing his limits, trying to understand his structure. Later, a figure entered the chamber. It was her. The alien girl stood by the doorway, alone, without guards, without attendants. Her eyes studied him not with the cold distance of a royal, but with something else, something unspoken. "You are not like the others," she said soft. Lorraine opened his mouth to ask why she chose him, but his throat was dry, and the words would not come. She walked closer, placed her hand on his forehead, and suddenly the pain in his chest vanished, the weight on his lungs disappeared. He felt light, as if he were floating in the middle of a dream. "You will not die in the ceremony," she said. "You are the first who might endure it." Why? He wanted to ask again, but still he could not form the words. "You do not understand yet," she whispered. "But you are the key." And then she was gone. He sat up, breathing hard, the energy in the room buzzing louder than before. Guards returned and told him to rest, but how could he rest now? He stared at the ceiling of flowing lights, thinking of what tomorrow would bring, thinking of the bond that killed every human before him, thinking of her touch and her words. She had chosen him. Tomorrow, at the first light of the twin suns, the ceremony would begin. Would he survive, or would he become another name on the long list of humans who dared to stand beside a god and fell? Only the ceremony would decide. Room where Rain lay was silent, except for the slow hum of energy that moved through the glowing floor. His body ached in strange ways, not like pain from injury, but as if his muscles were shifting and stretching, like something inside him was waking up that had never been touched before. His skin was warm, his heartbeat slow and deep, like a heavy drum echoing through his bones, and even though he was awake, he felt like he was drifting through a dream. He sat up on the edge of the bed, trying to gather his thoughts, but nothing felt real anymore. The moment the alien girl touched him, everything changed, and even though she had said only a few words, he kept hearing them again and again inside his head, like a song that refused to fade. "You are the key," she had said, but he had no idea what that meant or why she had chosen him out of all the others. The door slid open without sound, and two figures stepped into the chamber, their robes moving like liquid around them, their faces hidden behind smooth glass masks. They were not soldiers, they were attendants assigned to prepare him for the ceremony. One of them carried a bowl filled with glowing liquid, the other held a silver staff shaped like a spiral stand. The taller one said in a flat voice, "You will be cleansed before the bonding begins." Rain hesitated, but then rose to his feet, trying to remain calm, trying to act like he was ready, though he was far from it. The taller attendant poured the glowing liquid onto his arms and chest, and it felt like ice and fire at the same time, burning and freezing as it soaked into his skin, leaving behind thin glowing lines that looked almost like the alien patterns he had seen on the girl's skin. The lines crawled slowly across his body, forming shapes he could not understand, symbols that seemed to move on their own, twisting and turning like living language. The shorter attendant stepped forward and touched the spiral staff to his forehead, and a sharp pulse of energy shot through his mind. For a second, he could not see or hear anything, and then everything returned with strange clarity. "You are marked now," the taller one said. "Your body will be recognized by the chamber. It will not reject you. Not immediately will I survive." Rain asked, his voice low and steady, though inside his chest fear was growing like wildfire. "Is not our place to say," the attendant replied. "Only the bond will decide." They left him alone again, and the silence felt heavier now, like the walls were watching him, like the very air was waiting for him to fail. He sat back on the bed, breathing slowly, counting each breath, and trying not to think of what was coming, but memories kept rising no matter how hard he pushed them down. He remembered his brother, a strong man with dark eyes and a quiet smile, who had been taken in the choosing 3 years ago. Everyone thought he would survive. They believed he was different. They believed the stories of failure were just fear and rumor. But he never returned. Not even his body had been sent back to Earth. Only a message from the aliens that said he had been honored and released, and nothing more. Rain had joined the list of volunteers, not to be a hero, not to make peace with another world, but to find out what happened to his brother, to look the truth in the face, even if it meant dying the same way. And now that moment was almost here. He stood and walked slowly to the far wall, where a long mirror made of crystal reflected not just the body, but the energy around it. And when Rain looked into it. He saw something he did not expect. His reflection was no longer just human, the markings across his chest and arms glowed faintly in the dim light. But more than that, his eyes had changed slightly, the color deeper, the pupils sharper, almost like hers. And though his hair and skin remained the same, something in his presence felt heavier, stronger. The girl had done something to him when she touched his forehead before she left. Another door opened, not the one behind him, but one to the left, hidden in shadow. And this time she entered again alone, just as before, her steps light and silent, her expression unreadable. She stood across from him, not saying anything at first, just watching him as if measuring what he had become in the last few hours. "You look different," she said finally, her voice soft, but filled with weight, not weak, but careful. "What did you do to me?" Rain asked, not with anger, but with quiet need to understand. "I helped your body adjust," she answered. "The ceremony requires balance between mind and flesh. Most humans burn because their energy fights the chamber, but I gave you something to anchor you." "Why?" "And me?" Rain asked again. "Because you are immune," she said. "Your kind carries something in the mind, a wall that my people cannot create, not anymore. We are breaking from within. Something old, something unseen is consuming our thoughts, and when I reached into your memory, I saw that it cannot touch you. Then this is not about pairing," Rain said slowly. "This is about survival." "Yes," she answered, and her eyes did not look away. Rain felt his chest tighten, not from fear, but from the weight of truth. He was not chosen for beauty or strength or soul connection. He was chosen because he could survive something others could not, because his blood and mind were different, because he was not like them. But still he asked, "What happens if I die?" "Then the old bloodline ends," she said, "and with it the last hope of saving our kind." "And if I live?" he asked. "Then we both become something new," she said, stepped closer and placed her hand over his heart again, and this time the touch did not bring pain, but warmth, like light passing through water, like hands lifting him from the dark. And when she stepped back, he felt as if a piece of her remained inside him. "Rest now," she said. "The ceremony begins at first light." Left and the doors closed, and once again the room fell silent. But this time Rain did not feel alone. He sat quietly on the bed, looking at the markings on his skin, watching them shift and shimmer in the dim light. And he wondered what he would become by morning. A prisoner, not just a human, not a victim of a cruel ritual. He was something else. Now something chosen. As the twin suns began to rise above the horizon, the sky turned into a river of golden fire and deep violet light spilling across the ancient city, where towers curved like bone and wind through arches carved with symbols older than memory. The air was still, not silent, but full of hidden power, like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something that had not happened in many lifetimes. Rain stood at the edge of a wide circular platform carved into the heart of the ceremonial ground, surrounded by pillars that reached high into the sky, each one humming with energy that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. He wore the same silver robe, but now it clung to his skin like it belonged there, as if the threads had shaped themselves around his body, as if they knew what was coming. The alien girl stood across from him, her body wrapped in robes of living fabric that shifted between colors that had no names, the markings on her skin glowing brighter than ever, her hair floating as if underwater, her eyes locked on him without emotion, yet not empty. Her gaze held weight, not coldness, not heat, but something ancient, something sacred, something final. The attendants circled the platform, chanting in voices that echoed without sound or rhythm, that touched the bones but skipped the ears. Their feet did not touch the ground, their movements slow and full of meaning, like each step was a word in a language forgotten by Tim. Rain kept his eyes forward, though the pressure on his chest was building, though his lungs burned, though his knees trembled. He refused to fall. He had come here for answers, for truth. But now he felt something more rising within him. Not fear, not pride, but something in between. Something close to purpose. The girl raised both hands, and the entire arena shifted beneath their feet. The light from the sky bent and funneled into a single beam above them, and then without warning the beam dropped, covering them both in blinding Color, the connection had begun. At first it was like standing in a storm made of memory images. Sounds, feelings all crashing into him. At once he saw her as a child standing in halls of light, watched by silent guardians. He felt her loneliness, her confusion. He saw her rise through layers of tradition, her body tested, her mind broken and remade and again, until she stood as she was now, heir to a dying people, bearer of a curse she could not name. And then she saw him through her eyes. He saw himself sitting alone on a cold floor, back on Earth, reading the last letter from his brother, trying to make sense of a death no one explained, trying to understand a ceremony wrapped in silence and pain. Their memories twisted and merged, spinning faster until they were no longer two people, but one mind trying to balance between two worlds. Rain dropped to one knee, but he did not scream. He did not beg. He held onto the image of his brother, the sound of his voice, the way he laughed the day they watched the ships pass through Earth's sky. He held onto his humanity like a lifeline, and through it, he found the strength to stand. Again, the markings on his body began to move, not just glow, but shift like fire running through veins, lines forming new shapes, new language, not alien, not human, but something between. The girl stepped closer, her hand reaching for his chest, and when her palm touched him, the energy exploded around them in a wave that knocked the attendants back toward dust from the ancient stones and sent a pulse into the sky that made the suns flicker. His heart stopped for one long second, then returned with force. He was not burning. He was not bleeding. His mind was not breaking. Instead, it was expanding, stretching across distances he could not see. He felt her thoughts, not just the surface, not just emotion, but depth. He felt her fear, her hope, her burden. He felt the disease that had slowly poisoned her bloodline for generations, a sickness of the spirit, something that lived in thought, not in body, and he felt how it recoiled from him, as if his mind carried a fire it could not withstand. He realized in that moment why he had been chosen, not for strength or speed or bravery, but for resistance. His mind was a shelter, a place the sickness could not enter. He looked into her eyes and saw that she knew it too. The light around them dimmed slowly. The winds eased. The ground returned to stillness, but something had changed. Something had broken and been rebuilt. In that circle, something that could not be undone. Rain collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, but alive, his body drenched in sweat, his skin hot with power, his heartbeat loud like thunder in his ears. But he was breathing, he was moving, he had survived. The ceremony. Gasps rose from the crowd, silence followed, and then voices filled with confusion and awe, because no one had seen a human walk away from the bond. No one had seen a human still breathing after the light faded. The girl dropped to her knees beside him, not because she was weak, but because this was the moment she had waited for all her life. You lived, she said, not in wonder, not in joy, but in calm truth. Rain opened his mouth to speak, but no words came, only breath, only the weight of everything that had passed between them. Attendants rushed forward, trying to touch him, trying to lift him, but the girl raised one hand and they stopped. She helped him sit, helped him rise, helped him take the first steps away from the center of the platform. The people of her world watched them, not with hatred, not with fear, but with something slower growing behind their eyes. Something like the beginning of belief. Rain did not speak as they walked down the steps and back into the inner halls, but something inside him had awakened, something that would not sleep again, had survived the pairing not by luck, but because he was different. And now the world would have to face what that meant. The corridor that stretched before them was dim and wide, filled with the soft hum of walls, alive with light. But this time the light flickered with uneven rhythm, as if the very foundation of the palace had been shaken by something deeper than the ceremony itself. Every step Rain took echoed against the crystal floor, and though his legs were weak and his breath short, he walked with a strange strength. Now not from pride, not from glory, but from something that had rooted itself deep inside him. During the ceremony, the alien girl walked beside him, silent and calm, but her expression had changed. Her eyes no longer held the weight of loneliness. They now carried purpose, and behind that purpose was a fire that had waited too long to rise. As They entered the inner chamber. Guards stood, frozen, unsure whether to bow or raise their weapons, because tradition had never prepared them for this moment, never taught them what to do when a human emerged from the bond, still breathing, still walking, still standing beside royalty. The chamber doors opened and revealed the High Council, a ring of the most powerful minds of their people, their bodies tall and slender, their skins glowing with ancient lines, their faces hard as stone. None of them smiled. None of them moved as the girl stepped forward with Rain standing just a breath behind her. He has survived, she said, her voice calm and steady, her tone not asking for approval, not seeking praise, but declaring truth. This is not possible, said one counselor, his voice sharp like broken glass. No human mind has ever endured the merging of our kind. Their thoughts collapse, their bodies fail. This must be illusion. I touched his thoughts, she replied. I saw his memory, his pain, his questions. I saw how the sickness tried to consume him, and how it failed. He is immune. Another counselor rose from the circle, tall and veiled in dark colors, eyes like polished stone. You bring this creature before us and expect us to believe this is evolution, not contamination. Rain stepped forward without invitation, his voice low but firm, not asking for space, but taking it. I did not ask to be chosen. I did not beg to be saved. I came here to understand what happened to those before me, to know why they died and why we were left with silence. Looked at them without fear, because he had already faced something greater than them, something deeper than politics and tradition. I saw your sickness, he continued. I felt it inside the chamber. It moves like smoke, without name, without form. It destroys from within. And you keep pretending it is nothing while your people fall one by one. Silence followed his words, not because they were wrong, but because they were true, and truth had power in that room. He's not one of us, said a voice from behind the council, a figure stepping from the shadows, clothed in armor, lightless and cold, his presence strong enough to make guards shift in place. He is a danger. Girl moved between Rain and the voice, not in fear, but in defiance. He is bonded to me by the old right. If you strike him, you strike the balance. If you deny him, you deny the will of the bond. That is tradition, said the armored one, and tradition is broken. He must be tested again. Rain felt the air change, like tension, had a shape like anger, had a temperature. He could almost feel it crawling across the skin of the room. They want to break me, he thought. They want to crush the unknown before it becomes truth. The girl turned to the council, her eyes sharper, now her voice harder. You built your world on silence and fear. You let the sickness spread because it was easier than change. Now you face a choice: evolve or fade. The council did not answer, not with words. Instead, the lights in the chamber dimmed, and the walls began to shift, pulling apart, to reveal a second circle, a smaller platform carved with sharper symbols, more ancient than the ones on the main stage. Rain understood without being told. This was the trial of presence, not a test of strength, not a battle of blades, but a contest of endurance, of will, of identity, where one stood at the center while the minds of the council pushed against their thoughts, trying to break them, trying to strip them down until only truth remained, or until nothing was left. Rain stepped onto the platform without hesitation. He remembered the pain of the ceremony, the storm of memories and thoughts, the flood of feeling, and now he felt prepared, because something had changed within him, not just survival but connection, not just strength but clarity. As he stood at the center, the pressure began, minds reaching for his memories, pulling at his fears, trying to find weakness, and he gave them everything. He showed them Earth, not the strength of war, not the might of machines, but the beauty of people laughing beneath skies full of fire and wind. He showed them love between brothers and kindness between strangers. He showed them pain too, the ache of loss, the silence of death, the weight of being forgotten. And when they tried to twist his thoughts, he pushed back, not with rage but with presence, with the full truth of what he had become through the bond. The sickness tried to find him again inside the trial, but it still could not touch him, still could not enter his mind, and that failure echoed across the council like a warning. Trial ended not with a word, but with a silence so complete, it felt Holly Rain stepped off the platform still. Standing still, breathing, his eyes locked with those who had doubted, and in their faces he saw not fear, not hatred, but uncertainty. Change had arrived. The girl placed her hand on his shoulder, not as a queen, not as a leader, but as a partner, and when she turned to the council, she said, "We are no longer bound by what we fear, we are bound by what we must become." Guards returned to their places slowly, unsure, still, but no longer ready to strike. In the halls outside, something was happening. Whispers turning into arguments, doors slamming open, news spreading through the towers that a human had passed, the bond had survived, the trial had spoken truth, and that the sickness had met its match. But not everyone was ready for change that night. As darkness fell over the high spires and deep chambers, shadows moved where light once stood, voices gathered in secret places, and plans were made by those who still believed that control must be kept at any cost. And as Rain and the girl sat in the quiet of a private chamber, she looked at him and said, "They will not stop until they are certain we cannot win." Rain nodded slowly. The bond had made him more than he was, but it had also marked him, and now he would have to fight, not just to live, but to prove that his life had meaning. And the final choice was drawing near. The sun did not rise gently on the final day. Instead, it broke through the sky like a burning blade, cutting across towers and temples, with sharp golden light, as if the world itself had decided that shadows could no longer hide the truth. The city beneath the twin suns stirred not with peace, but with tension. Streets, once calm, now filled with marching feet, whispers turning into orders, guards moving through every gate as though preparing for something they feared but could not name. Inside the palace, Rain stood by a wide window, looking down at the world that had changed him, the world that had marked him, the world that might soon tear itself apart just to silence what he represented. The alien girl stood at his side, her presence quiet yet steady, her gaze not on the horizon but on the chamber behind them, where voices argued again, where leaders refused to let go of fear. "They know we are not the enemy," Rain said slowly, "but they cannot see beyond what they built. They think tradition is the same as survival." "We'll act soon," she answered, "not because they believe in what is right, but because they are afraid of what they cannot control." Rain turned toward her, and the markings on his arms pulsed with soft light, the same light that had once glowed inside the sacred circle where he had survived the bond. It still lived in him now, not as pain, not as threat, but as memory and strength. "We cannot run," Rain said, and she nodded once, because running had never been an option, because what lived inside them now was too big, too loud, too full of meaning. "There is one place left," she said, "one place older than the council, older than the throne. If we go there, the bond can be completed fully, not just between us, but through the source that began everything." "Where?" he asked. "Core Tower," she answered, "the origin of the right, the place where the first ceremony was held, before names, before cities, before the sickness spread." Without delay they left the palace, moving through secret halls and narrow tunnels, guided by energy that bent for the girl, a lone energy that recognized her not just as a royal, but as a key to something lost. For hours they traveled through stone and silence, until they reached a gate taller than any tree, made of pure white stone, untouched by Rain placed his hand on it, and the gate opened, not because of command, not because of force, but because the bond inside him was now complete and alive. The chamber beyond the gate was not like the rest of the city. It was not built with metal or crystal or lines of power. It was carved into the mountain itself, filled with ancient carvings and echoes that whispered without sound. Symbols glowed faintly on the walls, the same ones that moved across his skin, the same ones that had lived in her blood since birth. "This is where it began," she said, and he felt it too, a weight in the air, a pressure not cruel, not violent, but sacred, like standing inside the heart of something that had been waiting for a very long time. At the center of the chamber stood a pillar of light, rising from the stone into the endless sky above. It did not burn, it did not blind, but it pulsed slowly like a living heart. If we step into it together, she said, the bond will spread not just through us, but across our people, across every mind connected to the old energy. It will show them what we saw. It will break the silence that protects the sickness. Rain looked at the light, and then at her. He thought of his brother. He thought of the humans who had died before him, who had been chosen and forgotten. He thought of Earth, and its quiet nights and loud cities, and the blue skies that would never know what he had seen. Then we finish it now, he said. They stepped forward together, hand in hand, the markings on their bodies merging into a single pattern. Light meeting light, thought meeting thought, and as they entered the core, the chamber vanished around them. What followed was not fire or pain or darkness, but memory. Saw visions of the first ceremony of beings not divided by species, but united by curiosity and hope. He saw the rise of fear, the birth of the sickness, the way it hid inside thought, feeding on pride and silence. He saw how it survived not through strength, but through division, through fear of difference. And then the bond moved outward through the tower, through the city, through the minds of all who carried the old blood. Not as a weapon, not as a command, but as a mirror showing every thought, every fear, every truth, without filter, without lesion. The palace, the council collapsed to their knees as memories flooded their minds. Memories of the sickness and the children. It had stolen of the thoughts, it had broken of the truth they had buried in the streets. People stopped running, people stopped shouting. People looked at each other and saw not enemies, not strangers, but reflections. At the core, the light faded gently, and Rain and the girl stepped back into the world, not as royalty, not as legend, but as truth made flesh. When they returned to the palace, the doors did not close behind them, the guards did not raise weapons, the council did not speak with anger. They stood in silence, waiting, listening. Rain stood before them, his voice calm but full of the storm that had passed. This is not the end of your world, he said. This is the beginning of one that remembers what you lost. The alien girl stepped beside him and spoke not as a ruler, but as a guide. We no longer bond through fear. We bond through choice. And so the change began, not through war, not through blood, but through the quiet awakening of minds that had been closed for too long. Rain stayed in their world, not as a guest, not as a weapon, not as a symbol of survival, but as a bridge between what was and what could be. He walked the streets without guards, spoke to both humans and aliens without armor or fear, and everywhere he went the bond shimmered across his skin, a reminder of what was won and what must be protected. Had been chosen by fate, but he had chosen to endure by will, and now the path forward was one no longer walked alone. Story of the bond did not end with ceremony. It began there, and through him, through her, through all who remembered it, would never be forgotten again. The end.